Thanks for sticking with us, everybody. we're,
I
we're,
was like,
we were just talking about how every time I go live, I go way too loud. So I held myself back so that I don't get in trouble. I know I don't really get in trouble, but I do tend to get a little bit loud when we go live, so just got to restrain myself a little bit, show a little bit of restraint. I know it's not usually in my wheelhouse to show constraint, but I guess as a professional, I got to learn new tricks. I guess you can teach an old dog new tricks. I'm back with GM Grace from Crit and Miss Role Playing Games, GM of Beware the Witching Hour, Thrash the Troublesome from Out of the Abyss, and Far Beyond the Void, as well as many other appearances across the channel. Thanks for being here again.
no, that's so fine. It's a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure having you on. So yeah, this will be the second part of our interview, part 2, whatever, depends on where you're watching this, or listening for that matter. If you are listening to the podcast variant, if you could leave us a rating and a review, a good review, preferably.
Yeah. Let's be specific.
Gem's in the room here with me. She's saying any review is good. I wholeheartedly disagree. If you have to lie. Yeah. Give us a glowing 5-star review, please, if you don't mind. If you're watching this on YouTube, of course, please leave a comment. If you have any questions for myself or any of our guests, I'll pass it on to them if it comes to that. Please give us give the video a like, maybe give us a subscribe, a follow, whatever. It depends on where you're engaging with this content. Every little thing that you do helps build our exposure, and as a small channel being produced from North Queensland in Australia, it helps immeasurably get this content to the eyes and ears of more hapless victims. So please, anything that you can do, we sincerely appreciate it. Of course, you can join us on Discord as well, which is where we do all of our campaign planning and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to keep up to date with all the news, that's the best place to do it. And of course, our main touch point, I guess, that's I just made that up, but is right here on Twitch. So make sure you check us out at www.twitch.tv/crit_n_miss. Anyways, back to the thing that brought people here in the first place. That is my guest. Let's talk about your experiences with Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop role-playing games, shall we?
Yeah. Well, are you gonna ask me a question or do I just go?
Well, I was going to ask you a question, but I needed to take a long dramatic sip from my Corona before I did it. But if you have something that you want to say, it's an open court, as they say.
No,
so
you go first, please. No, you're interviewing me. You go first.
Age before beauty, that is what they say. All right, let's just dive straight into it then, shall we? With all the hard-hitting questions that we do here at 60 Minutes. I mean, critical conversations. Let's start at the very beginning. Grace, what I and the people at home are dying to know is what brought you into playing D&D in the first place? What
I feel like
happened to you as a child?
What happened? Deep-seated trauma. No. So I feel like I have talked about this before, and it's such an old reference. I was watching a video by the Try Guys, You know that old BuzzFeed channel that, like, it was forever ago. Before that whole scandal with Ned Fulmer. Anyway, that's like a whole nother story. They had a video where they were playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. I've always wanted to try it. And I've always been like, I got bullied a lot in high school and primary school. So I've always been like a relatively, like, I've got a lot of social anxiety. And like, so I'd always been a little bit scared to try it. But it was something that I'm super interested in because I've always loved like fantasy and like acting. Like, I'm a musical kid. I used to do all the musicals. So it just seemed like something that was really in my wheelhouse. And then I discovered the Townsville Tabletop Guild. I'm the secretary. It's pretty fun. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll just give it a stab. And that was 5 years ago. And now I play it entirely too much. And it takes up like 3/4 of my vernacular when I talk to people. So
I disagree entirely. I don't think you played enough. And quite frankly,
yeah, honestly, I don't.
We'd love to see you more on the channel.
Yeah, it would be nice. I just, look, it's not the only thing I do. I am doing my bachelor's in social work, and I'm like, I'm in like year 2 or 3 now. So it's starting to get to crunch time. The assessments are actually becoming difficult, and I was like, God, when did that happen? It's like it kind of went from here to like here, and I was like, ah. So finding I have less and less time for Dungeons and Dragons, which is so unfortunate. But I squeeze it in wherever I can.
I wouldn't worry about it. By the time you're finished with that, artificial intelligence will be doing all the social work for us anyway, so you may as well just indulge yourself in your Dungeons and Dragons fantasies while you still can.
Yeah, this is true.
But that is interesting. You know, that you're studying social work at university as well. Of course, you are the secretary for the Townsville Tabletop Guild. Ali, of course, is the president of the Townsville Tabletop Guild. At least she was last time I checked. I think that's still the case.
She
She hasn't been ousted by Fidel Castro yet.
No.
Okay, good.
There was like a brief little time where the students of JCU would know, like, in order to sort of like have a club at JCU, the board, like the executive board, has to be students. There was a brief period of time where Ali thought I was gonna have to be president and she was gonna be shadow president. So like she was just gonna like puppeteer me and I would have been the face, which like sounded so fun to me. And I was going around bragging. Like, I went home after the game and I was like to my dad, I'm like, guess what, Dad? I'm get to be a part of a conspiracy. And he's like, oh, tell me more. And I'm like, I get to be the president, but not really the president. It's gonna be like an evil plot from a movie where someone's like pirating me. But yeah.
But then Kim Jong-un died from natural causes, and everything was good again. So that's a happy ending to the story. And I do
Pretty
so
much.
appreciate that. Yeah. Ali, of course, has been all over the news recently for her PhD in that she wrote in regards to Dungeons and Dragons and how it affects people's mental health in a positive way. So have you found, sort of with your study in social work, is there any crossover with your experience in Dungeons and Dragons to your study in social work? Has there been any crossover with that, and with your own personal real life experiences with mental health and your sort of social anxiety?
Yeah. So I've said it a billion times, but I do have social anxiety. It always really surprises people because I'm very outgoing and bubbly and confident, but it's always the people that you sort of think wouldn't have social anxiety that always end up having social anxiety. But Dungeons and Dragons has seriously helped me so immeasurably with that. I used to be such an isolated person. I used to like be quite content with my little bubble. And now it's like I feel like I've been given all these really awesome tools to like go out and make friends. And it's like, I feel like, because I have anxiety as well, I feel so much more in charge of situations because I'm like, I can make stuff up. I can do this. I do this all the time. I've slayed dragons. I'm cool like this. In terms of like the social work side, almost every single workplace I go into, I recommend that we run a Dungeons and Dragons group. And it's always like, Dungeons, I don't really think that fits with our practice. I run it once and then everyone's like, oh my God, that's such a good idea. And I'm like, because it's particularly like Dungeons and Dragons has become such like a neurodivergent, queer kind of community, and I feel like it's so great because it's a place where everybody can come, and it's sort of one set of universally recognized rules and one set of sort of universally recognized like things, and we can all just come together and agree on something for once. And it's like a great way of sort of connecting people you wouldn't normally be able to connect. So like, part of what I do is I'm a social isolation officer, so it's my job to like connect people, to like get them connected to the community. And like one thing I've been toying with, because I actually participated in Ali's study, was like implementing it. So having like, a youth and elderly game of Dungeons and Dragons, so that it's like a chance for those elderly people to make those really crucial connections so that they've got somebody to talk to. And then it's also like a chance for the youth to like get to know the older generation. I feel like we have such a stuck mindset in terms of that, and I feel like Dungeons and Dragons is just such a great way of like getting to know people, because it's like you're not yourself, you're somebody else. And I feel like that's when you can really like get to know people. Like there's been so many times around the table where I've said things that I wouldn't tell my closest friend, just because you feel so comfortable because everybody else is out of their comfort zone. Yeah, that's like my take on it, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's only one thing that you said there, that I feel is something that I view a little bit differently. You said that it's something that we can all agree on, but I think the magic of Dungeons and Dragons, and I think you'll agree with this as well when I point it out, is that it's something that we actually disagree on, and that's okay.
Actually, you know what? That's a good point.
Yeah.
That is very much a good point. Because it's like the disagreeing is kind of what makes the game fun.
That's right. And it's
like you have the rules person, the number cruncher, the murder hobo. Like we all play the game so differently, but it's all a game we love.
And that's why it's become such a haven for people who traditionally find themselves on the outliers of society, like you said, the LGBTQI community, those people who are neurodivergent. Sorry, I don't know all the just the diverse sort of community. It's because everyone can be different, have different opinions, have different ways of engaging with this content, and that's okay. We work through that kind of stuff together. It's a big problem these days where people see something that doesn't line up with their sort of opinion or their view on things, and they go, "Oh, that's terrible," and I hate that, and I don't like it. But when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, people play it differently. People love playing completely different kind of character. I'd never play a character like that, never. But do I love playing with this person? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it's such a cool opportunity. Because you get to sort of experience a way of living that is not how you would normally live. Like Thrash is like the opposite of literally everything I am, and that's why she's so much fun to play. Like she's confident and she's big and tough and strong and she's not scared of anything, and like that's why I find her so much fun to play, because she's just like totally the opposite of me. And I feel like it's like a really good opportunity for the person playing as well to like get out of their comfort zone. Like I never used to do accents, and now it's like every single time I do a character it's a British accent. It's just a chance to explore something different and like see a new perspective. Yeah, and it's always so fun playing evil characters.
And
Because I'm goody two shoes.
if you're doing it right, you're creating a safe space for people to be able to explore those latent emotions and ideas that would normally stay dormant, that when you're playing this game with people that you know, people that you trust, or maybe sometimes even people that you don't know. I've sat down at a table with complete strangers and role played, fantasy space monkeys, and at first people are like, oh my god, this guy is so extra, but it doesn't take very long for them to get into the swing of things and be doing it themselves. And I think that is it's fantastic, and it's one of those things that I love about this game. Sort of taps into, and we spoke about this at length with Froth as well, it taps into those imagination centers in your brain that would normally not be encouraged, and I think that we could all use a little bit more of that. And I think if you take those studies that are being done into mental health, I think if you take it one step further, I think you'll find that it actually does stuff for your actual physical your actual brain matter. You know what I mean?
It definitely does. Part of what I do, like in my day job, is, as I said, the social prescribing, and like it's been scientifically shown that people who are socially prescribed. So, like, let's say you've got a case study where you've got this elderly man, and he's like. He got in a car accident a few years ago, and he's like, in rehabilitation, learning to walk again. It's actually been shown that somebody like that, if you connect him to a walking group, he's actually less likely to be dependent on like morphine or codeine in order to like keep him going, because he's sort of got that. It's been shown that like people like that are going to receive better rehabilitation outcomes. Like there's just a plethora of like research about how social connection is just invaluable to the human psyche. And that's what gets my brain ticking as a social worker. I'm like, so interesting, psychology. But yeah, it's so fascinating. Even like they talk about people who are in addiction. Part of the reason why they have the sort of group settings is so that you have somebody who's going through the same experience to sort of like understand and commiserate with. And that actually makes you like more likely to actually come out of rehab and be able to sort of stay like sober, because like you've been around people and you've all seen each other change. You've been lifting each other up, propping each other up, and then sort of by the time you make it out, like you're all sort of holding each other accountable. It's fascinating. It's so cool. And it's like one of the things I really love about my job, is there's just some things that you think would never make a difference to somebody. And then you do it and it's like their entire life has changed. And it's absolutely insane. And it's just, yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I think we're doing this at the at the right time, sort of making this content, because we find ourselves at the forefront of taking a deeper look into the effects, because these sort of things, people have been enjoying them for a very long time, since Dungeons and Dragons was first created. People have been enjoying the benefits of these games, but they haven't really been sort of looked into, haven't been taken seriously up until very recently. So, I do appreciate that, you guys are putting so much time and effort into doing this research so that we can show the rest of the world that we're not just a bunch of crazies.
Well, it's like a virus. It's gonna take over, like a pandemic. And it's just everyone's gonna play Dungeons and Dragons like a mind flayer parasite. It's just gonna.
It's a pandemic of fun.
Exactly.
And you
it's
don't
like it
get
also.
immunized.
Herd immunity does not exist for this pandemic. It's also just a great way to get away from technology. Like it's so cool because you need literally nothing to play Dungeons and Dragons. Like at its base roots, you could rock up with a D20 and that's your game. You don't even really need a character sheet. Like you could just have a seriously whacked out version of Dungeons and Dragons where everything's just D20 based, and that would still be a really fun game to play.
Yeah.
Like you don't need iPads, you don't need computers. Like in its most basic form, you just need a piece of paper and a pencil and a dice. And that's what I love about it too. Or it's like, it's very non-mean kind of like based, like how if you want to play tennis, you've got to get into a tennis club and you've got to get a racket and then you've got to get good shoes and you've got to be like everybody else because like Patricia has the best tennis racket. But like with Dungeons and Dragons, it's like you just need a dice and a piece of paper, and like they're not too hard to get your hands on. Dice are relatively cheap. You can buy like packs of 50 of them for AliExpress for like $2. So it's like it's really accessible for people. And that's why I'm always constantly so surprised people don't play Dungeons and Dragons more. It's so accessible, and you seriously don't need that much to be able to play it.
Yeah, if you've got a functioning brain, you can play Dungeons and Dragons. So that rules out 90% of the population, but the other 10% is going to have a great time. You're going to have a lot of fun, trust me.
Yeah, honestly. And dog.
And
I feel like dogs could still play Dungeons and Dragons. I've seen TikToks of that.
I feel like we could teach Ebony to play Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, I reckon she'd probably actually be better than me. So I'm not going to do that because I don't want to be taken over by a dog. That would do a lot of damage to my psyche. And then I'm going to have to see you as a social worker at the end. And you don't want to see me crying. It's ugly. I'm an ugly crier. Who would have thought? With a face like this? But no, it's true. So yeah, no, and there's no like understating how much of an effect it can have on you on a day-to-day basis, and those experiences that you have on the table, around the table, they sort of stick with you forever, almost as if you personified your character at that time. Because, I mean, technically you did, but you were never really there. You weren't standing at the brink of the Casa Doom or whatever it is that you were doing at the time. But those experiences really stick with you. So what I want to know is from you, both as a DM and as a player, what tabletop RPG experiences, doesn't have to be Dungeons and Dragons, but what experiences stick out with you the most? Like, what has stuck with you?
As a player, Ali was running a game of Vampire the Masquerade for us, and just randomly 5 of us rocked up and we all decided we were going to be witches from Salem, like separately. We all decided this and we rocked up and we were like, fuck, oh my god. And then throughout the sort of campaign Ali was running, it was like, how does a friendship that lasts like thousands of years, how does that sort of play out? Like, you know, these people have been friends for like 700 years. How does an immortal friendship look? And it got to a point in the story where one of us like nearly died, and it was like the most emotional I think I've ever been. Like, I actually genuinely started crying, and we were all crying. It ended up being okay because, as usual, I was playing the barbarian and I just pulled something out of my ass and killed the werewolves. But like, I was genuinely in tears. Like, it was gut-wrenching because, like, you get to know these people, like, literally, like, in this instance, we were all literally sisters, like, in the hypothetical sense, like, adopted sisters. And it was, like, gut-wrenching because, like, you feel like you know these characters. Like, you feel like this is, like, your best friend. So it hurts. And, like, I've been in games before where, Ellie's partner was running a Star Wars game for us, and we got Order 66. And one of the girls I was playing with was playing a Jedi, and we'd been playing this entire game together, friends. I was playing a clone trooper, she was playing a Jedi, her partner was playing a clone trooper. We all just had to turn on them and kill them. And she was crying, and I felt so bad for her. And I was like, is there any way I can avoid this? And he's like, nope, you just have to shoot her. And she was genuinely so sad, and I felt so bad. And it's so raw, and it felt so awful when he did it to us. Like, I was like, I knew this was coming, but it was out of nowhere.
And then you laughed and laughed and laughed.
And then we laughed and laughed and laughed, of course, after that. Always laugh and laugh. But you never really feel like, you know, even when your character's on the brink of dying, like when you write them up, you're like, oh, I'm never gonna die. It's never gonna happen. And then the second your character's on the brink of death, it's like you're on the brink of death and you're feeling like this out of body experience and you're like panicking. You're like, okay, how do I keep this thing that I love alive?
Yeah, no, that's the thing that you don't really understand until you've been in that sort of position. You don't sometimes really realize how deep the connection is with the character that you've sort of made up in your head until it's sort of Gemma, could you check Kitty for a sec?
Kitty, I took you out of there before.
Sorry, I think my cat was doing something unnatural in a box.
I thought you were throwing a shot, like you did the whole.
I got her, but she wasn't concerned. What was I going to say again? I've completely lost my
I don't remember either.
train of thought. I was going to say something, and it was brilliant. Trust me. Let's just...
If it's important, it'll come back.
Just think of whatever the most brilliant thing is that you can think of someone saying. That's what I was going to say. So we'll just sort of go with that.
Yep.
Okay. So that's two experiences as a player. What about as a DM? Have there been any sort of GMing experiences that sort of stuck with you? Like, that is a standout moment that's going to stick with me to the day I die. I won't remember the names of my children, but I'll remember that.
Not yet. I feel like they always keep getting one-upped. And so I'm stopping myself from creating one memorable one, because every time I do, it just gets one-upped by something else somebody else does. Like, it just never ceases to amaze me, this stuff that people come up with when I run games. It blows my mind. Like, there was a game when I run I feel like I only ever run Wild Beyond the Witchlight. It's so funny. I'm never gonna run any other type of D&D game. When I was running it at the club, and one of the people was like a chav monk. Like, you know, those British people that speak like this, and they've like got concealer lips and all that. And he wanted to figure out a way to get V energy drinks into the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you can do that, but like, here are the like criteria, right? And then he fed it to one of the giant snails, and like, for the giant snail race, he was winning, but like every like half a kilometer he had to make a check to like keep the snail alive, to like make sure that the snail kept living. That's probably one of my favorite moments. Or the amount of like times I'm like, you know what, this campaign, we're not going to make any kind of drug. There is no drug happening this kind of campaign. No narcotics. And then somebody just finds a way to make a drug, and I'm like, fucking goddamn it. Even my Curse of Strahd game, like, literally the first thing one of my players did was like, there's vampire dust. Do you reckon it would do anything if I snorted it? And I was like,
Yeah,
why don't you find out?
Never ceases to amaze how quickly people want to be pretend drunk or pretend intoxicated in one way or another. I played the beginning of Lost Mines of Phandelver with my 10-year-old son. The first thing he said is, my character is drunk. Completely intoxicated, wasted. I'm like, okay, you're 10 years old, but He did it really well. He did. He followed through with it. But it's like, I don't know what it is about being intoxicated that so many people want to explore. And what was it? 50 Shades of Grey matter, where you played the fairy character. I can't remember what her name is, and she ended up rolling a natural 20 on a con check to drink. She ended up drinking
Ginger.
the Goliath under the table, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty much the opposite of me. Again, I'm just the lightest lightweight in the whole world. So it doesn't take much to get me under the table.
Well, that's sort of like that collaborative storytelling as well, because you actually said that she was a lightweight, and I was like, okay, let's roll some con checks, and you're like, well, natural 20. I'm like, well, okay.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. She's an old hand at drinking.
Yeah, like maybe in like the Feywilds where they have like fairy wine, maybe she's a lightweight, but to that, like human alcohol is like
Exactly.
barely anything.
It makes me think of that scene in Lord of the Rings where Legolas, and I know I'm showing how much of a nerd I am, but Legolas and Gimli are having that drinking competition, and like, Gimli being a dwarf, he's supposed to have like such a fantastic constitution. He ends up getting absolutely wasted and like falls off his seat, and Legolas is like, I can feel a slight tingling in my fingertips. It's great. Anyway, I'm gonna stop nerding out. I'm gonna keep talking about Dungeons and Dragons, the least nerdy thing.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. Dungeons and Dragons is like the best. I could talk about it all day.
In the universe. Do you have any favorite species, classes, anything like that? Now that you've been playing for a while?
Oh god. I'm gonna be like the stereotypical bisexual woman and say that I really enjoy playing elves. I feel like every single bisexual person I've talked to is like, I play elves and exclusively nothing else. And I'm like, yep.
I didn't actually know that was a thing. Is that a thing?
Allegedly.
Okay.
Allegedly. Like apparently that's a thing. I had no idea it was. I love playing wood elves. I don't know why. There is just something so like I just get so ecstatic when I think about playing wood elves. Like digs into that like fantasy thing that I enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think if I were to get like isekai'd into the Feywild, I would be some sort of like wood elf barbarian druid thing. Like I just feel like it's such a cool like race, and I feel like there's so much you can do with it. Like you could have like something that's humanoid looking, you could have like literally a wood elf that's like made out of a tree, like it's like a little bit more tree looking, so sort of like something that's like dryad-ish. I do like homebrewing stuff though. So like, I've been toying with this character for a while that's like the last unicorn that's left. And in order to like protect her, a wizard turns her into like a human sort of form.
Wait. Is there a young Tom Cruise in a butt flap?
No.
No? Oh, okay.
No.
Tim Curry with a demon costume that gave him neck problems?
No.
No?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's an old fantasy movie. It was one of Tom Cruise's first roles. He plays a young like wood spirit or something like that, and he falls in love with like a human girl. It's called Legend. And it has Tim Curry, and it's one of his best roles ever. He plays this demon type thing, and the prosthetics, I mean, you were into like prosthetic makeup and all that kind of stuff, you would be blown away if you saw it, because it was back before CGI, so everything was, he's got like a chin out to here, he's got these horns that like curl up this way, and it actually gave him lifelong spinal problems, those prosthetics. It is those
are the best kinds of prosthetics.
It is the weirdest movie you'll ever see. If you want to see a young Tom Cruise in nothing but like a loincloth, check it out.
I am actually gonna watch that now. That sounds really cool.
Please do.
Yeah, like and then like I don't know, like as Savannah said, I used to be like super interested in prosthetics. It used to be like what I wanted to do for a living. And my favorite one was like the lady who played the Wicked Witch of the West. The green paint actually stained her skin. Like it had lead in it, and it stained her skin. And she was never able to get it off. Like she dyed green, because of it. So,
And she was
that's like.
typecast from that moment on.
Yeah, she's a witch. Always. It like gave her like skin issues, and it would start like eating away at her skin. It kind of reminds me of the what were they called? You know, the girls who used to paint, the uranium girls.
Oh yeah, yeah. They used to put uranium in everything.
Yeah, who used to paint the glow-in-the-dark paint on the watches. And the people at the factories would be like, oh, you know, feel free to like tip the brush with your tongue and like paint it on your fingernails. So the girls would come out like glowing, and then like into their 50s, their jaws were like falling off and decaying and stuff. Prosthetics are just the coolest. It's the prosthetics that leave like lifelong marks that you're like, that was a good job done. Here's it. The dude who plays the Grinch, I always forget his name, Jim Carrey. He talks about how he will never take a role like that ever again in his life, because he sat in the chair for like 6 hours every single morning getting the Grinch prosthetics done, because it's like several pieces. It's not like individually adhered. It's like several pieces that they have to like glue on and then paint and then stick the fur on and then airbrush it. Like it's mental, but it's so fascinating.
I am going to try and find an image of Tim Curry in his costume. I'm going to put that up on the stream for the younger audience who haven't had the privilege of being able to see it. Give me 1 second while I bring that up. Okay, we're going to go here. Almost there. Where are you? There you are. Okay.
I'm gonna look it up on my phone so that we can have this experience together.
I'm gonna put that over me. There you go. Look at that. Isn't that phenomenal? Check that out. Just Google Tim Curry Legends, and it'll come up with an image of him in his full costume. Look at those horns. How that passed any workplace health and safety, meetings.
Oh.
I don't know, but look at that. It's phenomenal.
Oh, it's fucking wicked. Like, they don't do stuff like that anymore. Like, that, nowadays, that would be like literally a stump, and then they would CGI the rest of the horns in.
It'd be a
like,
CGI with a tennis ball on the end of it.
Even the shading is just absolutely immaculate. Like, that would take hours to do.
Probably be played by Ryan Reynolds.
Probably, but like, I'm not gonna complain about that. It's Ryan Reynolds.
I don't know. I like Ryan Reynolds, but Tim Curry, I mean, that guy was a character actor like none
Yeah.
other.
It's just looking at this prosthetic is so well done. He would be in the chair for like hours getting that done. Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't film all his scenes in like one go. But as you said, it's back before like workplace health and safety.
Quite clearly, yeah.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons, if you watch the movie.
Those horns would be like half his body weight because they look like silicon. Like, oh, that would hurt. I can imagine. Damn.
It was before a lot of workplace and Screen Actor Guild work. Yeah. And I'll leave it up to you to decide whether or not you think that's a good thing. But actors tend to live longer. So whether or not you think that's positive, I don't know. I'll leave that up to you to decide. So. How many different tabletop RPG systems have you played? I know you played D&D. I know you played Vampire, the Masquerade. Anything else?
I've played Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
I've played Call of Cthulhu, Morkborg, one of my favorites, I have played Dungeons and Doggos. I love Dungeons and Doggos. It's so good. I've played My Little Pony Adventures in Equestria. That is very fun. Would recommend. It's just Dungeons and Dragons, but you are ponies. It is so fun. I love how I brought it up at a club meeting once, and I was like, I really want to play this, and literally half the boys in the room raised their hands, and they were like, oh my god, I want to play it too. It's such a fun system. I've played like a lot of non-DM systems, so there's like a few systems I've been looking at. There's one where it's just a group of clerics who are trying to convince the town that their deity hasn't died. So like they rock up for this big ceremony and they find their deity like murdered in the middle of the town, and so it's just 5 clerics trying to convince the town that their deity hasn't died, and it actually doesn't have a DM in it, which is just a fascinating concept to me, because it's like you're pretty much like given instructions like drops every once in a while, and they're like, this is what you have to do, and you're like, cool, and then you kind of make it up from there. I've been wanting to play Wanderhome, which is like, oh, I've played Avatar as well. That's a great system. I like that it's non-lethal. I think that is very cool. Like, because it's a good one for the kids if you want to like warm them up into it. But I think you can choose to make it lethal. I want to play Wanderhome, which is another like non-lethal cozy system that more values like roleplay over like combat. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever want to play anything other than Dungeons and Dragons. Every single time I play another system, like I love it, but I always find myself like missing Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
And then I'm like, after I play like Vampire, I'm like, oh, I just need to play a nice big beefy game of Dungeons and Dragons to like get it back going again.
All right. You've played a few there that I haven't heard of before, which I think is pretty surprising, and it goes to show like how, you know, crazily varied this whole thing is. Really, you don't have to play Dungeons and Dragons. Like, don't like high fantasy? Play something in space with you know, Shadows of the Empire. Play, you know, a dark dystopian future and cyberpunk. Yeah, there's sci-fi settings, there's fantasy settings, there's high fantasy, there's low fantasy. Whatever floats your particular boat. Mork Bori, you want things to be dark and brooding? Play that. You want to play
Morkborg's so fun.
Yeah, I so want to play that, and we will be doing
That's
that
great.
at some point. Put me at the wheel of a Mork Bori story and see where
So
things
simple.
go. It's gonna get dark.
It's such a simple system, which I love. Like, you get the character sheet and you don't toggle it at all. That's just your character sheet. And I think there's just such a nice simplicity about that. Like, as a new player to Dungeons and Dragons, it's very intimidating looking at the character sheet and you're like, what do all these numbers mean? Especially for me, like, I have dyslexia and dyscalculia. So, like, numbers and letters are not a vibe for me. So, like, when Dylan handed me the sheet and was like, this is it for the whole game, I was like,
What did you play? Gutter Trash?
Hallelujah. I did. I did play Gutter Trash.
How did I know it? How did I know?
Oh, it's just, I was like, I want to play a raccoon, and this is like the closest I could get. So I'm like, yes.
I've been wanting to play Mork Bori for a while. It's on the list. I've been wanting to play that. I've been wanting to play Pathfinder. I want to play Delta Green is one of the ones that I seriously want to play. I want to run Call of Cthulhu. So yeah, there's like, keep your eyes on the channel because things are about to get wild, ladies and gentlemen.
Pathfinder is so interesting. I've only played it once, and it's so, I don't know, it leaves even more up for interpretation than Dungeons and Dragons does. Like, I played a summoning class that was like super weak, but literally all I could do was like summon this thing. I think it was like they called it like an illithid, and then that is literally all you can do. But this thing is like unkillable. Like, you have infinite summons. Like, it can fly, it can swim, it has a swim speed. Like, you know, it got to the point where I was just like, oh, that looks like a dangerous situation. I'm just gonna send this thing down, and if it dies, we'll know that we're not supposed to go in there. Like, I was just killing it constantly.
Yeah, there's a great podcast, Patreon content for the Glass Cannon podcast. Someone plays a summoner, so he has to play essentially two roles. He plays Averxius, the devil that he summons, and he plays the hapless gnome who summons this devil at the same time, and the gnome is completely useless. Like, he doesn't have anything basically to add. He was a fisherman. He just doesn't know what's going on. He's basically been dragged into this, and Averxius, this like towering devil, makes for great role playing. And I think there's a little bit more freedom in sort of how you shape your character in Pathfinder, which, you know, I'd be excited to explore.
Definitely.
I had a spot lined up with the Savage Bear podcast that I was going to do a cameo for them on their Pathfinder podcast. Unfortunately, I had a breakup and that got in the way, and so unfortunately I missed out on that. I had a great character lined up. It was going to be a Strix. I think they call them a Magus, which is a sort of like a mix between a fighter slash mage, but they deliver their magic through their weapon. And I was going to play it like a young Dolph Lundgren, but with wings. So if you can imagine a young Dolph Lundgren with wings, that was going to be my character. And I was excited, but I missed out, unfortunately. We're going to bring this one to a close fairly soon. But before we do, what I wanted to know is just two questions. First of all, do you have any advice for anyone looking to get started in D&D and tabletop RPGs?
Just do it. That's really crappy advice. I totally get it. But I came from the total opposite kind of person you'd expect to be playing Dungeons and Dragons. And it's now like my entire life. Especially if like you think that like, you know, you have a lot of trouble making friends, or you just don't think you'd be good at it, or like, you know, you just think it's too hard. Just do it. Like, honestly, the worst thing that could happen is you turn up to a session and you hate it, and then you know, and you've tried it, and you know you don't like it. Like, I think, honestly, just do it. It's so much fun. And I think the more you try, the like harder it gets to become Dungeons and Dragons and like to do it. So just kind of let go and just do it. That's something I have a lot of trouble with, is just letting go. And so I think Dungeons and Dragons is such a good outlet, because you kind of just need to let it happen and let go of control and just let it happen. So just do it.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Just do it. What are you doing? If you're at work right now, just leave. Just go play Dungeons and Dragons. That boils it down to as simple as it can get, basically. If you're on the table, if you're interested in Dungeons and Dragons, I know there's a lot of people out there, and I'm always surprised when I tell people that I play D&D or tabletop RPGs that say to me, oh, you know, I've been interested in that, or I've wanted to do that, but, you know, they haven't known how to start or anything like that. I'll tell you right now, if you're on the fence, if you're listening or watching to this, you don't know how to get started, please send me a message on social medias. Join our Discord. We have a wonderful cast of community members who would be more than happy to give you whatever advice you need. But it's so much easier. Like you said earlier, Grace, you don't need anything for it. Have a blank piece of paper and a pencil. Go. You've got everything you need right there. Just jump on Facebook or whatever it is that you have available to you. Find yourself a group, and I guarantee you will find a group out there. There are people like you who, you know, love running this game, and every DM loves bringing on new players. And yeah, just please don't hesitate to send me a message if you have any questions or you need a place to find. I am a moderator for North Queensland Dungeons and Dragons, so if you're in the North Queensland area, if you're looking for a game to play, send us a message. I will hook you up with a great group. We have a lot of great groups. We've got the Valiant Odyssey, we've got the Townsville Tabletop Guild, we've got Luke from Big Game Small Pieces, all running games, as well as many others. So just do it.
Literally.
Okay, well, that's we're gonna have to bring tonight's episode to a close right there. I don't know when this episode is going to air on YouTube. I'm probably going to say next weekend, probably on Sunday, or maybe sometime during the week and then the next episode on the Sunday. We'll see how we go. In the meantime, make sure you check us on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. We're all over the place. And if you have any questions for Grace, you can reach out to her via the Discord. She's on there, so if you have any questions or you'd like to know more about the Townsville Tabletop Guild or anything like that, please feel free to do so. Are there any parting wisdom that you'd like to give people before we end tonight?
Oh, I don't think you want me giving wisdom. That's a terrible idea.
No, please do.
God, always eat your vegetables.
Yeah,
they make
God.
you grow up super tall.
Eat your vegetables, God.
Do it.
Do it. Stop.
Eat your vegetables.
Stop eating protein. It's not good for you.
I know.
Okay. Thank you so much again for being on tonight and hanging out with me. It's been a pleasure, as always. Make sure you join us for the next episode of Critical Conversations. Guess what? That's going to be next Sunday, and it's going to be featuring DM Ali. So make sure you join us for that one. That'll be at probably 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time as well, right here live on Twitch. If you have any questions for her, make sure you drop them in the Discord beforehand or join us live, and we'll answer any questions anyone might have in the chat, which is right over there if you're watching this on Twitch. Good night, everybody, and as always, may all of your 20s be natural. Good night.
Good night.